My name is Bob Bianchi. I'm the first National Vice President of the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy, and on behalf of our National President, Nancy Quinn, this is part of our Facebook Live series that we have every Wednesday, usually at 7 o'clock, but we're doing it today because we have a very special topic and some very special guests that we want to discuss, and it involves Columbus Day, folks. This has been a hotbed of a problem that's been going on for many, many years. There is so much misinformation that's out there. And I think it's now that the Italian-American community has finally gotten up on its feet. The Commission for Social Justice, we have Robert Ferrito here, who is the president of that. We have Rafael Ortiz, who's a subject matter expert, as well as some video from Carol Delaney, who is also an expert on this, because we think it's only fair to set the record straight and have our voice heard. Let's take a look at how this has devolved to the point that we can no longer have rational discussions about this, but rather, or intellectual discussions or educational discussions, but rather this is what we're seeing on the streets in 2020. That's right. Christopher Columbus, who is a person who has been essentially deified around the world as the great explorer, the courageous explorer. There have been these attacks by many groups with regard to him. And personally, I just have to say, this is an unacceptable manner with which to exercise what people call their freedom of expression. No, freedom of expression does not allow violence, does not allow a desecration. This was declared a national holiday in this country. We have many cities that are named, schools that are named, and many places where people have revered Columbus. Okay, there's issues. We're ready here at the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America to debate anybody on this topic, because at least let's get the facts correct, even though now we're going back hundreds of years to judge a man based on the culture at that point in time. Lisa Marie Falbo from Long Shot Productions out here in New Jersey had an opportunity to talk to a subject matter expert of great regard, Carol Delaney. Lisa, can you please tell us who Carol is? Tell us a little bit about the interview process and what we can expect when you show us what you produced with her.
Yeah, so Carol Delaney, she's a retired professor of anthropology at Stanford University, and she is very well versed in the history of Christopher Columbus, what he meant to, obviously, the discovery of America and really the Western Hemisphere. But you'll see in this interview that she really dispels some of the stereotypes that are out there right now about Christopher Columbus. It's very interesting that he was such a revered character in American history, but over the past couple decades or so, he's become very vilified. So she works to dispel that stereotype, and I think she does a good job in proving her point and backing up those facts.
You know, Lisa, unfortunately today people get their facts from Facebook and Twitter and social media, and one person says it, and then it becomes, I hate to use the expression, hashtag fake news about Columbus. So I'm looking forward to seeing that video. Let's take a look.
Oh, technical difficulties. Sorry, Bob.
No worries. That's what it's all about. But we will always rebound, Lisa Marie. You know, just
Justin, I told you should have done it. No, I'm kidding. It's here.
Okay.
Carol Delaney, thank you so much for joining us today on a special edition of OSDIA Facebook Live celebrating Columbus Day. Now, you've been an astute scholar of everything Christopher Columbus. What piqued your interest about the explorer?
I knew hardly anything about Columbus except in 1492. He sailed the ocean blue. And when I was at Stanford, I was teaching a class in 1999, called Millennial Fever. And I came across one little footnote of Columbus's apocalyptic millennial beliefs. I'd never heard of them, nor had any of the historians whom I asked. So I got intrigued because my interests have been in culture and religion. And the more I found out, the more I found that that's really what was sending him on this voyage. He wanted to go meet the Grand Khan of China, set up a trading post like Marco Polo, and the profits were to be used to finance a crusade to take Jerusalem back from the Muslims before the end of the world. Columbus figured out how many years were left, and he thought there wasn't much time. And so he wanted this crusade to get Jerusalem back from the Muslims so that the Holy Sepulchre could be rebuilt, so Christ could come again and save all the believers. And the other point is, when he discovered the natives in Hispaniola, he wanted all of them to become Christians so they would be saved. And he kept asking Queen Isabella to send over priests so they could be taught and baptized so they too would be saved. And she never sent him. There was only one. He didn't do very much.
The word genocide has been thrown around recently in regards to Christopher Columbus. But you say that genocide never had anything to do with his voyages. Can you please explain that?
Well, genocide means people trying to erase an entire race. And that was not at all his purpose. As I said, he's still trying to find the Grand Khan. He wants to baptize everybody so they'd be saved. He never had a slave. He was against it. And it was these other people who were doing that. And in fact, horrible Bobadilla at one point captured him, put him in chains, and sent him back to Spain. Queen Isabella released him immediately, but Columbus is being blamed for things that other men did, and he was totally against it.
Carol, based on your research, what kind of person was Christopher Columbus?
I think he was a good guy. He never had a slave. And as I mentioned, Bartolome de las Casas, who's been held up as the, good guy, actually had slaves and had 2 encomiendas, which are big ranches run by slaves. And yet he's held up as the defender of the Indians, of the natives. And so they don't seem to get that. And Columbus never had a slave. It was the horrible people that Isabella sent over, Roldan and Bobadilla, who went marauding and raping against Columbus's orders. And he's one man. She sent over 17 ships and hundreds of men on the second voyage. And he couldn't control them all. And they kept going against his orders while he's still off half of the time, still sailing, looking for the Grand Khan.
Carol, talk about how unfair it is to the legacy of Christopher Columbus, that he went from being such a revered character in American history to a straight up villain in recent times.
I think it's very unfair. And I think part of the reason is people know nothing about him, and they are blaming him for introducing slavery. And maybe it's also because some of the indigenous peoples now are concerned about their place in our country and their treatment in our country. And so they go back to the person who's called the discoverer. Of course, he never set foot on the land that we call America. I think probably the indigenous peoples in the country have not been treated that well. And I think something should be done about that, definitely. But to blame Columbus for it, I think is not right. It's what the people should be blamed are the rest of the population, and more things should be done for the indigenous peoples in this country. Obviously, that needs to be done. But to blame it or to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, I also think is not right. Maybe there should be a separate day. I'm happy to have a separate day to be Indigenous people and have that be a day where we learn more about the Indigenous peoples in the country. But also people need to learn more about Columbus.
Carol, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are interested in learning more about Christopher Columbus, make sure to pick up a copy of Carol's book, Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem, from all major online retailers. Thanks for watching, and happy Columbus Day.
Excellent interview, Elisa, and how thought-provoking it is that I would bet you 90% of the people that are throwing red paint on Columbus statues and knocking them down, and then the political correctness of our politicians that don't even have the courage to at least put together a fact-finding commission, would not even know that Columbus never stepped foot on the land called the United States of America, yet he's being vilified in the manner in which he is. She brings up thought-provoking comments, and my question to the audience out there and anybody that's against Columbus is, if Ms. Delaney, Dr. Delaney, who studies this as an anthropologist, is correct, then doesn't it at least warrant an opportunity of taking a deep breath, stepping back a little bit, and let's determine the facts at what went on here. And I call upon all of our politicians that are pandering to this and throwing claws over the statutes, removing the statues, and not allowing the Italian-American community at all to have its say, and listening to people like Dr. Delaney and others. Shame on you for falling into this. Hey, in the end analysis, I'm willing to go toe-to-toe with history, and we'll see what happens, but unfortunately, we don't even get there. Dr. Mary Kovac from the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America is going to make an introduction into another very important guest that we have on the show with us live today. But I ask all of you before we get to that guest, if you have any questions or commentary, please put it in the Facebook chat. We're live right now. Justin Smith from the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America is going to be scanning those, and we have no problem in trying to get our subject matter experts to be able to answer those questions for you. Enough is enough. Dr. Kovac, can you please introduce Rafael Ortiz, who has written 3 and now going on 4 books on Columbus, please?
Absolutely. So Rafael is a highly sought after expert on Christopher Columbus. He's authored 4 books on Columbus, 3 in English, 1 in Spanish. He has done his due diligence reading the actual journals written by Columbus himself and can point by point clarify any misinformation. He is a member of the Christopher Columbus Association and is currently collaborating with the National Columbus Education Foundation on their new website. We are thrilled to have you, Rafael, and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Rafael, give us, you listen to Dr. Delaney. I see that Dr. Kovac has behind her a number of your books, I believe, over what would be her left shoulder, I think it is. You're a subject matter expert. What do we need to know about these attacks on Columbus vis-a-vis the idea that he was a murderer, that he committed genocide, that he brought diseases to the indigenous population? Give us from stem to stern in a short period of time. We have 5 to 7 minutes. What we need to know in order to get us back to a place of reasonableness in terms of investigating whether Columbus is a hero or a villain.
All those accusations are made up. They're false. Number 1, genocide. What they really mean by genocide is people who die of sickness, diseases, epidemics, and so on. That's not genocide. That's just sickness and diseases. Like right now, we are having this pandemic right now. That's not a genocide. And plagues, epidemics, pandemics exist before Columbus, during Columbus, and after Columbus was dead. And the reason why they're getting away with that argument is because most indigenous peoples in America before Columbus, they did not have a written language where we can see their history and their history of their plagues and sicknesses and diseases and so on. Number 2, slavery is not America's original sin, because slavery was not originated here in America. Civilization came from the old world, and then people moved to the new world, and slavery was practiced over there. And then when people came here, they brought it here long before Christopher Columbus. And also there are not 1 but 2 Indigenous Peoples Day right now in the calendar. One is in August. It's known as International Indigenous Peoples Day, August, and then Native American Heritage Day or something like that is celebrated the Friday after Thanksgiving Day. And also November is Indigenous Peoples Month, so there is no need to rename anything. If we need to rename or change Columbus Day because of the practice of conquest, war, and slavery, then I would argue then we should also eliminate Indigenous Peoples Day because they also practice war, conquest, and slavery, with the addition of cannibalism and human sacrifices. If we are going to rename places, yeah, we need to be uh, consistent because Columbus, as Delaney say, he did not own slave. But if we're gonna be consistent, then we need to maybe change the name of America because Amerigo Vespucci, he also sold slave during one of his journeys. Maybe we need to change the name of Mexico and New Mexico because the Mexes, they were enslaving other people and using them as victims for human sacrifices. If we are going to be consistent, then we need to rename the Caribbean because the name Caribbean came from the Caribs, which were a group of indigenous people who were cannibals, and sometimes they kill the people in entire islands. That's real genocide, but you won't hear that story because it won't fit the false narrative that people are telling you. And by the way, I am indigenous. I am not Italian American. I am Puerto Rican of Hispanic, of indigenous descent, specifically those that supposedly Christopher Columbus killed, the Taínos.
Well, Mr. Ortiz, let me ask you a quick question. I mean, when Columbus got the funding from the Spanish to be able to sail, because as I understand history, correct me if I'm wrong, he was looking for that funding. He was looking for alternate trade routes. He had some of the most extraordinary navigation concepts and courage of any navigator at the time. Was he doing this for the purpose of giving Queen Isabella the opportunity to subjugate people? Did he know at the time, if you know, that he knew that they would be bringing diseases? Was this what his primary motivation was, or was it other? Was it another motivation? And then ultimately, like in all politics, including every country in the world, it can start to be used for a bad thing.
The answer is no. The purpose of Columbus, it was like a multifaceted, meaning that it was scientific because it was exploratory. It was economics because they were looking for a new route for trade. It was also religious because he wanted to spread Christianity to people that had never heard the gospel of Jesus. Which I believe that's the real reason why Columbus is hated today. And it was at some point, it was going to be political because conquest, you know, like it or not, it was the rule of the day. People, you know, you had the Muslims who were trying to conquer the world because they believed they had that right. Today, we believe people don't have the right to conquer others, but back then people were thinking very different. And then you have the Aztecs who believed they had the right to conquer their neighbors and enslave them and use them as human sacrifices. And in the case of Columbus, the conquest, the way that he was looking for the conquest was through friendship, through relationships, and looking who would be his friends. In this case, was the Taínos. And he would make an alliance with them and fight at some point some common enemy. In his case was the Caribs, who were the people that I told you about, who were cannibals, who were invading the islands of the Caribbean. And he made a treaty with them to protect them, at least with one of the chiefs, Chief Wakanagari. He made a treaty with him to protect him from his enemies. And that's the way that it was back then. And that's the way that it was throughout history, where you have a nation making treaties with another nation to fight a common enemy.
Right. And Mr. Ortiz, we know that Columbus Day became a national holiday in the United States government because of all the great things that you mentioned that he was doing. I'm just curious before we go any further, Justin, do we have any questions on Facebook?
Well, a lot of what Mr. Ortiz touched on were, kind of involved in people's questions. But one of the questions that did kind of jump out to me comes from Barbara Fumoso Trezuzzi. And she wanted to know, how do we better get this information out there? It can't just be the Italian American community that, does this history and reads into this and knows this, this information. So how do we better get the information about Columbus that you're sharing with us tonight out to the masses?
What I would suggest to everyone is to take the time and read primary sources so you can get informed. Right now, I have in my hands, this is in my opinion, the best primary source. This is the biography written by his own son. And keep doing what we're doing. We're doing these webinars, seminars. Next Wednesday, I will be doing some kind of webinar in some kind of university. This year, I was planning to go and talk about Columbus at some schools and one church, but then COVID-19 happened, so it kept me from doing that. And this is the way, that's actually the way that those who hate Columbus got their way through the mainstream, because they've been doing this for decades. They've been making websites, anti-Columbus websites. They've been going to schools teaching that Columbus was a horrible man. They've been going to city councils demanding that they rename Columbus's Day. We need to do the same. We need to go to city councils. We need to teach our kids. We need to read. We need to tell our friends. And also, it might sound weird, but I think that some of us also need to start suing some of these people, because what they're doing is discrimination against the Italian American community. Because if this was the Black American community, it would be taken as racial discrimination.
Well, Mr. Ortiz, we're going to take a little bit of a sidebar from what our programming was, because these are two topics that you brought up that I'm going to have to bring in right now. The Commission for Social Justice president, that's the anti-defamation arm of the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, Robert Ferrito. No one has been on the lines fighting this fight more than Robert has. He comes out of the Grand Lodge of New York. Robert, I mean, there's a question from the Facebook viewer. What can we do, and how do we get the message out? And is anybody listening? Robert.
You know what, Mrs. Formosa, you know what? You have to build a coalition, which we're doing. You have to expose, I believe you have to expose the weakness of the opposition argument. The opposition, I believe, is intellectually lazy. I really do. We have to turn the popular dialogue around about Columbus. That's what we have to do. And it's all about the education. And, since 2005, the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America has been addressing this. We've been battling this a long time. We put out a document called Fact versus Fiction, and we addressed a lot of the issues that we're still addressing 15 years later. We're still talking about it. It's been a long battle that we've been fighting, and that's what we have to do. We have to create accessible and popular narrative materials. We have to get it out there. And what really bothers me, and it's really frustrating, and you touched upon it before, Bob, these elected officials, they don't even bother. You speak to them, they look at you like you have two heads. They don't even bother to educate themselves on Columbus. And again, they're caving to the mob. They're pandering to their constituents. And that's one of my greatest frustrations. And I'm sure we all share that. We all share that same frustration. And we just got to get out there and do it. Yeah. And as far as legal avenues, we have to. And we're in the process of doing that right now with the coalition and CSJ. We're advising our Grand Lodges throughout the entire country, working with the National Coalition Education Foundation, National Columbus Education Foundation, the Columbus Heritage Coalition, a coalition of 58 organizations in the state of New York and throughout the country. The National Columbus Education Foundation is the 5 major organizations in the United States. We're out there, we're doing it, and we are taking legal action through a number of states have already done that. And then in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, they got temporary restraining orders that are preventing these elected officials from taking down the statues. And by the way, the elected officials, these mayors, they don't have the authority to do that. These were put up by commissions, by the way, money donated by Italian immigrants and Italian American organizations, hard-earned of their raised money through fundraising. They gave these to the cities where they were erected. And these mayors did not just have authority to do that. So we are addressing that. We are addressing the discrimination issue. We have to build a coalition between the actual discrimination and the Italian Americans. And we're doing that. We're addressing the Congress people in Washington. We're going after our congressmen, and we are. And that's what has to be done. Absolutely.
You know, Robert, I want to ask you a question based on your advocacy, and I see your letters going out all over the place, and it's so disheartening, as you said, and go back to something that you said. We have been a discriminated upon ethnic group, okay? Now, I'm not trying to compare everybody's, everybody wants to compare. I've been more discriminated than you've been discriminated. Discrimination in any form isn't good, period, end of story. But what I find to be extraordinary with the Italian community is, despite the fact that we represent so many people in this country, why is it that we can't even get Congress to do something that is a basic thing that they would do if another ethnic group sneezed and asked them to do it, which is put a commission together, come up with findings to make a determination if these facts are accurate or not accurate, and let's go from there. Why can't we even get them just to do that? Is it fear of the other groups that are going to attack them? Is there no integrity in the process to do the right thing? Are we so meaningless as an ethnic group that they don't respond to us? Talk to me, Robert.
I mean, do you really want me to answer that? You really don't want me to answer that, because
Yeah.
You know what? You touched upon a nerve. Because absolutely, we sat down with the Italian caucus from Washington, and we have not heard from them yet. We were supposed to do that, just what you're saying, have a symposium on this. We have not heard from them yet. And you know what? We haven't heard from any of them. We've addressed them and they're not responding. Yes, I do believe they feel that, Italian Americans, they assimilated into America and they became Americans. And we're basically, we're warm people. We don't want to start trouble. We just want to work. We want to build. We want to support our families, practice our traditions. And yes, I believe they totally ignored us. But you know what? That's going to change, because this whole issue has united the Italian American community like I've never seen before. And I'm so proud that we're doing that. And I do believe that at some point we are going to turn this around, because truth is on our side. And the more we educate and the more we get the information out there, the more we unite as Italian Americans, I do believe that this will happen. I really do. And I believe we're really going to move forward on this. I really
Robert,
do.
you're right. You guys have organized. Thank you so much for your efforts. And maybe somebody in Washington will listen when enough of us to answer Barbara's question, start squawking about it and start getting organized. And you've done a tremendous job with the other organizations, but spearheaded in large measure by you, or putting a whole team together. I think before we get to any more Facebook questions, Lisa Marie Falbo seemed to want to ask a question. Lisa, go ahead.
Well, actually, it was a comment, just getting back to the Carol Delaney interview. I had asked her opinion, whether or not she thought that all of this was discriminatory against the Italian Americans. She actually thought no. She actually thought that it had nothing to do with the Italian American community, and it was all about, some of the other groups, which again, they view it as a black eye, and they're not realizing the impact. They're just not thinking things through, is what her words were.
Yeah, well, that may be so, but all those, like you look at Columbus Circle in New York, and when you think of all the dimes and nickels that poor immigrants that weren't allowed to work in many places, weren't even allowed to be buried in the state of New Jersey and in other states, they had to go elsewhere because they were Italian, had pride in Columbus. It was something that the Italians identify with, maybe others don't understand that. Before, I want to try to wrap it up a little bit. I know I want to get a question from Mary in there, and any more Facebook questions. Let's start with you, Justin. Any other Facebook questions? questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So a reoccurring theme is people are wondering, and Brian James wrote, and he's a great example. He said, I'm an attorney out of Massachusetts. How do I get more involved with the organization and help fight this fight? Robert?
You know what? Is he a member of the order? First of all, that's a good question. I believe he should join the Order of Sons and Daughters of Italy in America. He could contact us on our, through our email at CSJ, and I would be happy to work with him. We'll be happy to answer him. We'll be happy to have him join the legal team of our coalition. We could always use attorneys to give us support, and absolutely, definitely, just tell him to email us and get in contact us. We'll be happy to speak with him.
And so that, I was just going to say, for everybody, that email that Robert is talking about is csj@osia.org. And Robert, he spends hours going through those emails. And so he will make sure that it gets read and gets answered.
And I will speak to them directly. I will personally call them.
And Robert, another important thing I think is part of that question is if people want to help donate, because some of this costs money, we're doing the best we can. A lot of lawyers are working for free. It costs money to do filings and things of that nature. How can they contribute?
Go to our website, go to CSJ, go to our website. You'll see the donate button. And I'm sure Mark will bring us up to speed on that, and you could donate. We could absolutely need the funds to combat this this battle on two fronts, between the education and between the legal battle that's going on. We absolutely could use the donations, that without a doubt, and we appreciate everything that could be done by the Italian American community.
And thank you, sir, for asking that question. Justin, anything else?
That looks like it for right now.
Okay, Mary, I think you had a question.
I actually have several, but I'll start with one that I think is probably the most popular. So to circle back, Dr. Delaney addressed briefly in our interview, there are references that Columbus enslaved natives. This is falsely becoming his legacy when in fact, he sent secret letters to the Spanish asking for help and reporting some of the abuses of their men inflicted on the natives. We also know that Spanish law wouldn't allow Christians to be sold as slaves, another reason Columbus wanted to baptize the natives. Can you please set the record straight as to whether or not Columbus believed in slavery?
And that would be me, right?
Yes.
Okay. When Columbus came to America in 1492, he met the Taínos. They were victims of the Caribs, and he made, as I said, a treaty with one chief to protect him. When he came back for his second voyage, 1493, what he was doing was either destroying their canoes, the canoes of the Caribs, so he could stop them from doing what they were doing, and also he would, yes, enslave them and send them to Spain. But that was the only people that he suggested to enslave. And he sent a letter to the Queen, even asking that they be treated humanely. And he was looking that they would learn Spanish so they could communicate at some point the gospel of Christ. And he said that even he said a few times that what he proposed was even temporal. When he came back for his second voyage, also he found that his men were dead; they were murdered. So he was forced to fight a few battles in Hispaniola. And people, something that they won't tell you is that these few battles he did with the assistance of, or with the help of, other native tribes. And the people who were defeated, they were sent again to Spain, and they were sold as slaves, but they were prisoners of war. It was temporal. When Columbus was removed from office, the slavery was suspended. That's the story that people won't tell you. And also I want to add that most of the slanders that people are repeating today, they come from a document found in 2006 from somebody who was a political enemy of Columbus. His name was Bobadilla, and he wrote a bunch of slanders against Columbus. That's the slanders about that he was a horrible man and he and his brother were mutilating people. That's where they got it from. But nobody believed those accusations, not the king, not the queen, not even Bartolomé de las Casas, who was sometimes very critical to Columbus. And he even say more. He said, even if those accusations were true, that he was punishing very hard the colonists, they deserve it because they were the same people who were mistreating the natives, and Columbus was trying to protect them. And he, as a governor, he had the right to do so. And he was even ordered by the Queen to do so. The Queen told him that he would punish very harshly anyone who mistreated the Taínos, and he did.
Mr.
That's the long
Ortiz,
story short.
yeah, just a real quick question. I was told while we were preparing for this, maybe you can illuminate this, or Mary, Dr. Kovacs can illuminate this, that our history books were rewritten on Columbus some time ago on the strength of one person's assessment that changed the textbooks throughout the country. Do you know who that individual was and how that happened? Because with regard to Columbus, I hear it's been largely disputed, despite the fact that people don't have the courage to remove it. Mr. Ortiz.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, well, I don't know who did that in the past. I know, like a few years ago, I was looking at the school textbooks of some of my kids, and whoever this guy is, and this is recent. No, it's not a textbook from decades ago. This is a recent textbook. The guy, he was giving the credits of the discovery of America to the Vikings. So yes, there are people out there who had changed a little bit some of the text. And there are also revisionists right now who are trying to change the whole thing, like that thing called the 1619 Project. They want to rewrite American history.
Okay, so we're starting to get a little long, but Mary, do you recall the name of that person, Dr. Kovacs or Robert?
Howard Zinn.
Sorry?
Howard Zinn, Z-I-N-N.
Okay, yes.
That's right. That's right. Well, there's a whole nother subject to look at. Mary, one more question, and we're going to have to cut this short. We appreciate everybody watching.
Sure. So you talked a little bit about his relationship with the Taíno tribe. Can you talk about his specific relationship with Chief Guacanagari? I had heard that Columbus was actually named godson to one of his, or godfather to one of his sons.
Yes, that's the name of the chief that he made that treaty with. And he went to Spain, and he went with 7, I think, natives. And yes, they voluntarily became baptized, and one of them became his godson. And I think his name was, they renamed the name as Diego. I believe maybe in honor of Diego Columbus, maybe. He became his translator too. When Columbus returned back from for his second voyage, and things start to become dark, the relationship, because the Spaniards, again, they were doing whatever, and they were causing trouble. Columbus even offered Diego Columbus as in marriage to one of the chiefs in order to establish peace. So yes, that's the relationship. And also Guacanagari, he's the one who also asked Columbus to help him in one battle, and Columbus said yes, because he would fight and capture the man, or the chief, who killed Columbus's man, the ones that he left in his first voyage. I want to add one more thing quick, that if Columbus was here today, he could sue all these people for defamation and slanders, and he could win, like Nick Sandman. I don't know, you remember that kid? That the media slandered him, and now I guess that he's a millionaire. Columbus will be here. If he was here today, he could sue all these people for defamation.
Mr. Ortiz, my last question to wrap it up, and I'll take my prerogative as the host, is that we've had Dr. Delaney here, who's an anthropologist with extraordinary credentials. We have somebody like you who's written 3 and now moving on to your 4th book. I'm curious how much of the knowledge that you've expressed here today came from Twitter?
No, but
how much of the information that you gave us here came from Facebook or Instagram or one of the social media sites are?
None, except that the revisions, the first time that I saw those claims, false claims, came from Facebook.
Yeah, can I presume, and do I know, and I know the answer to this question, that you are giving us the information, as Dr. Delaney did, based on primary source documents and research that has been done thoroughly by you with regard to the history of Columbus?
Yes, and the reason is because I started a website and it's actually in Facebook. It's called Official Christopher Columbus. It was something educational, but I decided, you know what, I need to investigate these allegations because I don't want to promote someone who maybe was a criminal. I need to make sure that Columbus did not commit any of those allegations. So I read everything that I could find, and thankfully my mother language is Spanish. So I read every document, even silly letters, you know, him or the Queen send him whatever, you know, just I read everything just to see if I could find any. And what I found is that all those allegations are false.
All right. Well, you know what? I challenge our political establishment on a state, local, and federal level to listen to this and prove us wrong. Okay, because we've had about enough of it. And the Italian American community is going to respond in the voting box as well as our voices. I'm not asking for the scale to be tilted one way or the other. I'm saying before we throw paint on a man of historical character and significance and allow this to continue, that we do the minimum of using some resources to investigate the truthfulness of this. Okay, I have enough of my rant. I want to thank all our great guests. Mark D'Annunzio, the membership commission chairman for the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America. Tell us how people can find us and how people can contribute.
Okay, well, first on our website, OSIA.org, there's a membership button there. Just press that and there's two, you can become a member or it has membership options. There's become a regular member, attend lodge meetings in person, or become an at-large member with all the benefits of a regular member, but this is just an online membership. You get the magazine, the newsletter, and also all the benefits and the discounts of regular member. And follow us and like us on all our social media. Sons of Italy on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. Also, I want to put a plug in for the donate button. When you go to osia.org, look for the button on the right. It says Columbus Under Attack, Defend Our Heritage. Now that money will be used to, again, hopefully repair some of these statues, like the one in Boston where Columbus was, the statue was beheaded, and the paint and clean up some of the paint and vandalism in the other cities against the statue, and also give us due process for getting these statues back that were taken down in the middle of the night without due process by people without the authority to do that, such as in, I believe, Newark, where your family donated money to have that statue placed back in the day, your great-grandfather. I'm sure that's a cause close to your heart. But again, the donate button for CSJ to help us fight this cause. They're trying to erase our heritage. Don't let them do that.
Mark, that button is on the homepage, I believe, of the osia.org website. Is that correct?
That is correct. Up on the right-hand side, it says Columbus Under Attack, Defend Our Heritage. Just click on that button. It'll take you to a landing page and you can make a contribution.
Okay, this was the Facebook Live version. A little out of order here on a Monday, but we're here every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We've had some great guests on topics that are a lot less heavy than this, but this is important, not any less important, of course. And we will be back with a great lineup on season 2. I want to thank everybody that's here. On behalf of the National President, Nancy DeFiore Quinn, my name is Bob Bianchi. Thank you very much for attending. We hope you donate. We hope you participate. We hope this dialogue was of interest and importance to you. Thank you very much. We'll see you Wednesday at 7. Be well.